Picture this. It is exactly 1:12 in the morning.
Oh, that is late.
Very late. And outside your window, the rain is falling over the city like this thick, heavy blanket.
I can literally picture that. It's the kind of rain that keeps everyone indoors, right?
Yeah, exactly. The kind that washes the streets clean. You get those long, blurry streaks of the streetlights reflecting off the wet pavement.
Shitting a mood for sure.
Right. And you are just sitting there in the dark. And you are tuning in to a scratchy, static-filled radio frequency.
Just searching for a voice in the dark.
Searching for a voice, yeah. Someone to keep you company in those strange, lonely hours right before dawn. Which brings us to why we are here. Welcome to our deep dive into the source material today. We are looking at something truly, truly special.
We really are. We've gotten our hands on this recently uncovered treasure trove of late-night radio phone-in shows.
From a very legendary New York station. Specifically, we are exploring archived audio from a YouTube channel that is entirely dedicated to this incredibly atmospheric 1970s broadcast.
Right. The show known as After Midnight with Daktari Knight.
Such a great name. And the audio we are analyzing today, it provides this pristine window into a highly specific era of broadcasting.
An era that relied entirely on the theater of the mind. No visuals, just pure audio imagination.
Exactly. So our mission for this deep dive is to explore one very widely whispered about broadcast from this archive. It's episode 21 titled The Librarian's Locked Drawer.
A classic.
Oh, an absolute classic. And by analyzing the specific interaction between the host and his caller in this episode, we can really start to understand why this incredibly intimate sort of noir-style format was so deeply captivating.
Because the psychological pull of this type of media was incredibly effective. So effective, in fact, that we are actually seeing a commercial station reviving this exact format today.
Which is wild.
50 years after the original production ceased.
It is a fascinating phenomenon to wrap our heads around. Half a century later, with all the instant technology at our fingertips, we are still craving a person sitting in a room, taking blind phone calls in the middle of the night.
We really are.
But to understand why this is being revived, we really have to establish the vibe of the original show. I mean, just listening to the audio, the atmosphere is incredibly dense.
Oh, you can practically smell the studio.
You really can.
The scene paints itself. It's late. The air is thick, and the microphone is picking up that slight, warm, analog hiss of the tape.
I love that sound.
Me too. And then there's Daktari Knight himself. He has this signature husky 20-mile bursts a day voice.
Yeah, the pacing of his speech is so slow, almost croaky.
And he uses it as a tool. He invites people from all around the country to just phone in, to share their inner fears, their unexplained experiences, or honestly just their late-night anxieties.
He isn't rushing them to commercial breaks either.
No, not at all. He creates the sanctuary on the airwaves. It's like a confessional booth where the only barrier is the telephone line.
And he sets the tone right out of the gate. He tells the audience that the rain brings out the stories, and that if you are awake, the lines are open at 555, KNIGHGHG. Okay, let's unpack this, because the core narrative of episode 21, the whole reason this specific broadcast is so legendary, begins when a very unique caller gets through on those phone lines.
Right.
So who exactly is on the other end of the line?
The caller introduces herself simply as Eleanor, and what immediately strikes you as a listener is the audio contrast.
Oh, the contrast is stark.
It really is. Her voice sits in this beautiful juxtaposition to Daktari's rough, smoke-stained gravel. She has this very soft, calm, highly educated tone.
She speaks with this measured cadence, like someone who has spent her entire life surrounded by quiet study and careful thought.
Exactly. And in the context of broadcasting, that contrast is pure gold. It instantly signals to the audience that we are shifting from the gritty, rainy streets of the city into a much more refined cerebral space.
She mentions she is calling from Manhattan, just a few blocks from where she spends her days. She worked at the main branch of the New York Public Library on Fifth Avenue.
The one with the lions.
Yes. Passing between patience and fortitude every single morning for almost 20 years. I mean, that would certainly give you a very specific perspective on the city.
And Daktari picks up on that detail immediately. He points out that it must be quite a place to spend a career, insulated from the noise of the city, surrounded by all those books just sitting quietly on the shelves.
But Eleanor's response to this is what really elevates the call from a standard late-night chat into something much more profound.
She pushes back on his assumption.
She completely pushes back. She tells Daktari that libraries are actually funny places because people mistakenly think they are silent. But in her experience, they are deafeningly full of voices.
Which is such a striking image.
She drops this incredibly poetic line. She says, and I quote, "Every book is someone speaking across time." I honestly had to pause the audio when I heard that. It is such a haunting way to look at a library.
It really reframes the whole space.
Right. You are holding a physical object that contains the very thoughts of someone who might have lived hundreds of years ago, and they are whispering directly into your mind.
And that phrasing establishes the philosophical foundation for our entire deep dive today. It taps directly into the human desire to connect, to share our inner thoughts, and to communicate across vast gaps of time and generations.
It's beautiful.
And interestingly, this philosophy perfectly mirrors the radio format itself. Think about it. Daktari and Eleanor are two strangers connecting across the void of the city, just as a reader connects with a long-dead author.
That is a brilliant parallel. But Eleanor didn't call a radio station at 1 in the morning just to discuss literary philosophy.
No, she did not.
She called because that philosophy had manifested into a physical anomaly in her workspace. She called the 555KNIGHT hotline because of a locked drawer in her desk.
A locked drawer.
Yes. And Daktari, who clearly understands radio pacing, just lets a beat of dead air hang after she mentions it.
He knows exactly how to hook the audience.
He prompts her to explain what she has hidden away from the rest of the library staff.
And this is where Eleanor reveals that the drawer is filled with notes. She describes them as hundreds of small pieces of paper that she's been finding tucked inside returned library books over her 20 years of working the circulation desk.
Initially, Daktari approaches this with a healthy dose of broadcasting skepticism, right?
Oh, definitely. He points out the mundane reality of library work. People use scraps of paper as bookmarks constantly.
Yeah, a forgotten grocery list, an old train ticket, a dry cleaning receipt.
He tries to ground the conversation, just assuming it's the detritus of everyday life.
But Eleanor is so quick to correct him. She reads a couple of examples live on the air, and you instantly realize these are not grocery lists.
Not at all.
One of the notes she quotes simply said, "The city remembers more than we do." And another one read, "You'll know when the page finds you." They're usually just a single sentence, maybe a passing thought, sometimes accompanied by a date, and they're completely unaddressed.
Just left there for whoever happens to crack the spine next.
Exactly. Now, a public library in the middle of Manhattan sees millions of patrons, so it's easy to see why she initially brushed these off.
She assumed they were just the eccentric scribblings of various poetic New Yorkers, a charming quirk of the city.
But the broadcast shifts gears when she explains why she started hoarding them in her desk. Here's where it gets really interesting. Because she didn't just casually collect them. She started actively investigating the origins of these messages.
Which is such a librarian thing to do.
It really is. She tells Daktari she used her access to pull the checkout records for the specific books where she found these notes. She assumed she would just find one dedicated, regular patron who was slipping them in.
But what did the checkout records actually reveal?
The records completely defied her expectations. The books were borrowed by completely different people. There was zero overlap.
None at all.
None. Different ages, different demographics, people living in entirely different boroughs of the city. But more importantly, the checkouts spanned different decades.
This is the part that gets me.
She reveals that the earliest note she ever cataloged was found tucked inside a copy of F. Scott Fitzgerald's The Great Gatsby, and that particular copy hadn't been checked out in years. The return stamp on the inside cover was clearly dated 1978.
Wait, 1978, but the show itself was broadcasting well after that.
Right. So if the books were checked out decades apart by completely unrelated people, how could she be certain the notes were part of the same phenomenon?
Well, what's fascinating here is how the physical evidence completely shatters logic. Eleanor confirms to Daktari that despite the massive time gaps and the disparate borrowers, the handwriting on every single note is identical.
Identical.
Ink is the same. The loops on the cursive letters are identical. There's the exact same tiny slant to the right on every single piece of paper, from that 1978 Gatsby note all the way to the one she found that very week.
The physical logistics of that are mind-bending. Just think about maintaining the same penmanship, the same loops and slant for that many years without any variation in hand strength or style.
That alone would be enough to make a late-night radio segment legendary.
But she had even more evidence, didn't she? It wasn't just the ink.
No, the detail that truly elevates this mystery, and honestly the reason the audience was likely glued to their radios, comes down to the paper itself.
The paper.
Eleanor, being a meticulous archivist, describes the paper in minute detail. Every single note is written on a small square of cream-colored stationery. It is slightly textured, and it features a faint watermark tucked away in the corner.
And because she is who she is, it bothered her so much that she actually traced that watermark to the original manufacturer.
She did.
And what did she find out about that specific stationery?
She tells Daktari and the thousands of people listening in the dark that this specific brand of textured, cream-colored stationery completely ceased production in the year 1963.
1963. Let that sink in for a second. The earliest note was found in a book stamped in 1978, but the paper itself stopped being made 15 years before that.
It's completely irrational.
That means whoever is orchestrating this has been hoarding discontinued paper for decades, using the exact same pen, maintaining identical handwriting, and slipping these anonymous poetic messages into library books across half a century.
The sheer dedication required to pull that off is staggering. It makes perfect sense why she locked them in a drawer.
Oh, absolutely. She was cataloging an impossible timeline.
And it creates a brilliant piece of auditory storytelling. Daktari just lets that 1963 revelation hang in the air.
Just dead air.
Yeah. The use of silence on radio is usually considered a cardinal sin, but in noir broadcasting, dead air forces the listener to lean in. When he finally speaks, he asks the natural next question. Collecting historical oddities is one thing, but what was the catalyst?
What specifically happened to make her lock the drawer and call a radio station at 1 in the morning? Eleanor explains that the tone of the notes eventually changed. She found one particular message that broke the pattern.
This is where it gets scary.
She discovered it inside a history book. Specifically, a book detailing the construction of the New York Public Library itself. The note was written on that same 1963 cream paper, with the same slanted handwriting. But the message wasn't a generalized poetic thought. It said, if you're reading this, it means the library chose you.
The psychological shift there is so potent. It transfers the agency from the anonymous writer to the physical building itself. The library chose you.
It takes a passive, generalized mystery and suddenly gives it a terrifying level of sentience.
And beneath that chilling message was a single ominous date. It just said, tomorrow.
Having a deadline imposed on a mystery that's been stretching out for decades would be incredibly unnerving. You can entirely understand why her instinct was to lock the drawer, swallow the key, and try to pretend none of it was happening.
But ignoring the library doesn't seem to be an option in this narrative. Eleanor goes on to describe the climax of her experience, which occurred tonight, literally just hours before she dialed into the radio show.
And this is where the broadcast truly capitalizes on its medium. She paints a vivid, haunting picture of her evening shift, utilizing purely descriptive language that makes the listener feel like they're standing right next to her.
She sets the scene perfectly. She is working late, shelving books in the Rosemain reading room.
And for anyone who hasn't been there, it is a magnificent, cavernous space with this breathtaking ceiling. It feels less like a reading room and more like a cathedral.
And she specifically uses that phrase. She tells Daktari that at night, when the patrons are gone, it is cathedral quiet.
Cathedral quiet. The acoustics of that description translate beautifully to radio. You can just imagine the soft thud of the books sliding onto the wooden shelves, the slight squeak of her shoes echoing off the marble.
She is completely alone in this massive historic room. And as she slides the very last book of her shift onto the shelf, a small piece of paper flutters out and falls to the floor.
Another note.
The same 1963 cream paper.
The same slanted handwriting. But what did this one say?
The message read, "The drawer should not stay locked forever."
The drawer. How could the writer possibly know about the drawer? Up until this exact moment, the mystery had been passive. It was just someone leaving generalized thoughts for the universe to find. But this note crosses a massive boundary.
It means someone or something is observing her specific behavior.
This raises an important question. How does a broadcaster handle a caller who has just revealed they're essentially being stalked by a half-century-old mystery?
Right, because Daktari is clearly hooked. But before he can even analyze the implications of the drawer comment, Eleanor delivers the final, most chilling detail of the broadcast.
I still get shivers thinking about this part.
Beneath the message about the locked drawer, written in that same decades-old ink, was a single word. Her own name. Eleanor.
I cannot imagine the adrenaline spike she must have felt in that moment. Standing alone in a cathedral-quiet room, holding a piece of paper that ceased production before she was likely even born. And it contains a message addressing her by name, referencing a secret drawer that only she knew about.
It's a brilliant, terrifying culmination of the mystery. No wonder she needed to hear Daktari's comforting, gravelly voice in the middle of the night.
Putting yourself in her shoes really highlights the immense psychological weight of the situation. She explicitly tells Daktari she had never found a note addressed to her before.
The anonymity was the one rule the mystery had strictly followed.
And breaking that rule shook her to her core. It forced her hand. Daktari recognizes the corner she has been backed into. The deadline from the previous note was tomorrow. So he asks her the ultimate question of the broadcast. What is she planning to do when tomorrow arrives?
And this is where we see the revolution of her character arc, happening live on the airwaves. She takes a very long, quiet pause. You can hear the static of the phone line.
When she finally answers, she tells Daktari that she plans to go into work tomorrow and she is going to unlock the desk.
But she isn't going to destroy them or turn them into the police.
No. What does she actually plan to do with this massive collection of impossible notes?
She tells him that she's going to take all of those hundreds of accumulated messages and she is going to return them. She plans to methodically place them all back into the library books, scattering them across the shelves.
Which is such a wild decision. Daktari naturally questions the logic behind this. He warns her that by doing so, she will be actively continuing a cycle that has been operating in the shadows for decades. He asks why she would choose to keep the mystery alive, rather than ending it.
Her response is incredibly profound. She simply replies, "I think that's the point."
She realizes that these messages, these quiet voices from the past, were never meant to be hoarded in a dark, locked desk by a single person.
They were designed to be found. If we connect this to the bigger picture, Eleanor's choice is deeply symbolic of how we interact with history and media. She is choosing to relinquish her control over the anomaly. By putting the notes back into circulation, she stops being an observer or a terrified collector.
She transitions into a willing participant in a multi-decade phenomenon.
She ensures that the cycle continues for the next generation of readers, effectively honoring the philosophy she brought up at the very beginning of the call, that libraries are places where people speak across time.
She is acting as the conduit, keeping the voices alive. And Daktari recognizes the strange beauty in her decision. He tells her that if the library really did choose her, he hopes it was for a good reason.
And Eleanor lets out this soft, nervous little laugh and says she hopes so too. It is an incredibly quiet, remarkably human moment to end their interaction on.
The mastery of the format is fully realized in Daktari's sign-off. After Eleanor hangs up and the line goes dead, he doesn't immediately jump to the next caller.
No, he lets it breathe.
He speaks into the microphone, his slow, gravelly voice wrapping around the narrative we just heard. He summarizes the experience by stating that libraries hold more than just books. Sometimes they hold secrets. Little messages folded quietly between the pages, waiting years or even decades for the right reader to find them.
Waiting for the right reader. It is a phenomenal piece of audio theater.
So what does this all mean? Why are we dissecting a 50-year-old late-night radio broadcast about a librarian and some spooky stationery?
It's a valid question.
We bring this to you because the revival of this format says so much about who we are right now. We live in a modern era defined by instant, frictionless digital communication. We fire off a message, it is read 3 seconds later, and it is entirely forgotten by tomorrow morning.
That's about true.
The fact that a commercial station is reviving the Daktari Knight format today, and the enduring appeal of Eleanor's decade-standing notes, it proves something vital about the human condition.
It proves that despite all our modern technology, we still have a deep, underlying craving for delayed, intentional communication. There is a profound value in seeking out multiple perspectives across time, rather than just reacting to the immediate present.
The modern revival of the slow, methodical phone-in show works for the exact same reason Eleanor's notes work. They both offer high-friction connection.
Just as those anonymous library notes connected complete strangers across different decades and neighborhoods, we too find profound meaning in the quiet, accumulated thoughts of the people who walked these streets before us. We want to know that something we leave behind might mean something to someone 50 years from now.
We want our voices to carry across the void, which leaves us with a final, lingering thought for you to carry with you today. Think about the physical spaces you inhabit. The old buildings, the waiting rooms, the public libraries.
The places that hold on to time.
Yes. The next time you find yourself wandering through the stacks and you pull down a dusty, forgotten book and you hear that stiff spine crack open, take a closer look at the pages. Run your fingers over the margins. Because if Eleanor was right and the library truly does choose its readers, What anonymous message might be sitting there right now, carefully written on 1963 cream paper, waiting specifically and deliberately for you?